Yo, what's going on, guys? Bexio back, and today we got a brand new video being how we can get to being a millionaire the easiest way possible. And it's very simple. All you gotta do is smash the subscribe button and like this video. But actually, it is going to be Bitcoin, and people might be sick and tired of hearing Bitcoin and thinking after this collapse or crash of Bitcoin and crypto that people are hating it. But in reality, Bitcoin is the asset that could most easily bring someone to $1 million in their investments in whatever they want to do. And it's shown because Bitcoin is changing the world, and it's changing how the world reacts to it. Before, it used to be all hate, and we still see a lot of it. But we do have the world changing with El Salvador being the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender in their country, and they're going to hold Bitcoin as reserves. And it makes a big impact on what Bitcoin can do and is doing. And I think it's just the very beginning of what's going to happen. A lot of these countries and third world countries are going to want to come to Bitcoin for stability with currency because they just don't have it with their own. They have hyperinflation or massive inflation or currencies that are just worthless, and nobody can really run a country with a currency that they just can't really rely on, and they rely on the dollar. But recently we've seen a lot of printing with the dollar, and as that happens, the countries like third world countries like El Salvador and all those other countries who use the dollar as like their currency actually get hurt the worst because they can't print dollars, but the US can. And when we print dollars, their money gets worth less without getting any more. So they lose a lot of value, and it's just bad for everybody. So moving to Bitcoin is something that can help stabilize that. And in doing so, brings more value to Bitcoin. Obviously, it's right now the current like assets of the world is around $400 trillion, and right now Bitcoin is at 665 billion. It is less than 1%. It is 0.17% of the world's assets, so it is microscopic and still has a lot of room to grow. So even we can look at this article. We have Kevin O'Leary saying that he thinks Bitcoin will beat stocks, and that's a big thing for someone as a big investor like he is to say Bitcoin is going to be beating stocks, because obviously when you do that, you actually are he's very supporting Bitcoin through this. And when he says that Bitcoin can beat stocks by 400 basis points, which is fancy Wall Street talk for 4%. That means Bitcoin's annualized return would be somewhere around 11% to 14% because the S&P returns 7 to 10% a year. But I think that Bitcoin, and I think a lot of Bitcoiners and people who are in crypto in general, think that Bitcoin is going to severely destroy that, where if the top end, say 10% of the S&P is returned a year, then I think Bitcoin would have no reason to or not be unable to double that at least and get 20% a year, 30% even, with how it's doing, and it's actually moving on and actually evolving into what it can be. And that is something that is like once in a lifetime opportunity for the vast majority of people. So you just need to think of it in that way. And I think it's going to destroy the S&P and destroy like those returns, where if the S&P even gets great years, 10% averaging returns per year, I think Bitcoin has no problem getting 20, 30%, even 40% returns a year for, at least a short period, if not for the rest of the decade. So this is the Bitcoin annual returns from 2011 to 2020, and we can see the percent change right here. So just to give a glimpse of why even 20, 30, 40% isn't a lot for Bitcoin, we can just take this right here and add up all of these different changes here in percents. And then you get 8,911, and you divide that by 9 because it's the 9 years, 2011 to 2020, and you get 990% would be the annualized return of Bitcoin for basically the 2010 decade. So 2011 to 2020, basically that decade. And so saying Bitcoin can get 30% a year is saying that Bitcoin isn't even doing what it did last decade, which probably won't, because with more money, you need more money to move more percents and all that. But saying, even if you said Bitcoin is to do half as good as it did last decade, that's still like 500%. So to say that it can get 30-40% a year, I don't think is unreasonable, and I think is actually probably pretty realistic. And for a lot of people with price targets, obviously we hear 500,000 thrown out a lot because like that benchmark. We hear 100,000 and 500,000 and even the millions. And I do think that Bitcoin will reach $1 million a coin probably before the end of the decade, and maybe even before that. But we can even look at this stuff, like this chart right here. This is obviously Bitcoin stock to flow model. It's Plan B's model. And it's been something that's been pretty good at predicting or flowing the price of Bitcoin. And we can see it's been pretty accurate, so it's not something to throw out the window, not yet. And I think it's pretty accurate itself. But you can see right here where we are. And this is the halving that just happened. And the price is to get around 100,000. So chances are Bitcoin will overshoot and then come back down, maybe undershoot, and then fluctuate here. And then the next halving would be another run up to $1 million by 2025, 2026. And I don't think that that's unreasonable, because halvings, with more people getting involved, and the halving again, it would mean Bitcoin's even more scarce, even harder to get, and people who want to get in at that point will have to pay a much higher price because there's just not enough Bitcoin to go around. So that's something that everyone needs to think about, as well as when you just break it down to just numbers and you see there's 21 million Bitcoin that'll ever be created, and there are 41 million millionaires in the world. So there isn't even enough Bitcoin for every millionaire to have one. So it's something that is going to be worth it. And for the richest people in the world, if they want it, then they can't all have one. The millionaires can't all have one. The people who have over $1 million total cannot all have one Bitcoin. There's just not enough. So having one Bitcoin makes you, a part of the richer people, because Bitcoin is already showing it's taken over. I think that Bitcoin is changing the world, and obviously stock to flow models show that as well. So we can even look at this other stock to flow model, this the cross asset model. It compares Bitcoin to other assets, like the flow thing here. We'll read it right here. What is the S2FX? First things first, stock to flow cross asset model takes a new approach. So an example, given the US dollar went from a gold coin to paper backed by gold to a paper backed by nothing. That's what happened with the dollar. And then the model uses 4 clusters to indicate phase transitions. So you go from proof of concept to payments to e-gold to financial asset, and cross compares it to gold and silver. So you can see run-ups go in that types of things here. We have like proof of concept in the beginning, and then you have the payments going from here to payments. And then right now we see a lot of things about gold and being digital gold and all that. So comparing to e-gold, and the next leg up would be becoming a financial asset. And that S2FX model has Bitcoin running here to over 288,000, and then the next having it running closer to 10 million, like $8 million a coin, 7 million. And this is super bullish, like comparing these clusters, and again is been pretty accurate, but is super bullish. And if it becomes a financial asset, which I still think it can, but that's like very bullish. I think it can, but it's something a lot more riskier to be thinking about. The other asset, or the other stock to flow model right here, is more accurate with just not more accurate, but more simple when thinking just stock to flow, how much Bitcoin is coming in and all that. So that's what this compares. And I think that, there's a lot that can be taken from these models. They've been pretty accurate, and a lot of people look at them to predict the price or see where things can be going. And it just seems like basically like $1 million of Bitcoin is inevitable, and then after that is just taking over the world. $10 million of Bitcoin. If we see financial asset and the world come together and Bitcoin become a reserve currency for the world, anything's possible. but the smartest investors like Kevin OLeary backing Bitcoin basically by saying it's going to outperform stocks in the S&P. You have stock to flow models that are just doing great, and it's actually changing the world in real life, because El Salvador is starting to make Bitcoin, or has already made Bitcoin legal tender, starting to do Bitcoin mining with their volcano, and all of like South America, Central America are having their politicians come out on Twitter supporting Bitcoin, having laser eyes, and it's all just really showing like Bitcoin is actually changing the world. So the easiest way to become a millionaire would be to just buy and hold Bitcoin and not like stress about price movements in the short term. A lot of people think about price movements in the short term, think about fluctuating and it falling and doing all that, but I mean, it's going to do that because it's still maturing as a market. Once it gets more mature, probably like at the end of the decade, we'll have a more stable Bitcoin price, but getting there is going to be very volatile. And the people who want to take the risk will reap the rewards, but also you should be a little responsible at least, and probably only have money, or not have a ton of money. If the price action is scaring you and making you nervous, then probably you have too much money in the market and you might want to scale back a little bit. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Bitcoin, obviously, I think it's the asset to hold and going to be the best performer probably for this decade too. It was already last decade, probably going to do it again this decade. And as always, guys, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. I'll see you guys in my next video.